So hello, everyone, and thank you, Lucas, for that kind introduction. I'm happy to be here at the DLD speaking to you all today. As Lucas said, my name is Robyn Shapiro, and I'm head of operations for a project in New York called the Lowline. The Lowline is an effort to build the world's first underground park, and what I'm going to speak to you about today is a story behind this crazy idea, where we are in the process, and how we're very seriously planning on making this a reality. So first off, fun question for you all. Anyone know who this guy is? Anyone in the gaming industry still in the audience? Well, his name is Shigeru Miyamoto, and he is the designer of one of the world's most popular video games ever, Super Mario Brothers. It also happens to be a game which I addictively played as a child, and I'm not the typical video game type of person. So what makes this game so popular? Like many video games, it plays off a sense of adventure and curiosity. If you jump up and hit that question mark, a gold coin emerges. If you jump a bit higher into the clouds, you might find a special reward. But if you have the guts and the curiosity to go down that green pipe, well, a whole new world emerges. Some of the rules are different, some of the species look different, but it's a whole other universe, really, this whole other land of opportunity and possibility. Similarly, New York City is a bit of a video game itself. On street level, you have many distractions and exciting things to see. And it's at street level that most New Yorkers think of as their city. And the underground is this dark, nasty, smelly place that you'd only go for maybe the purposes of using the subway. But it's not really a place of any value. Interesting to note, though, is that there's currently 13 acres, or 52,000 square meters of unused space beneath Manhattan today. And the project's co-founders, Dan Barish and James Ramsey, were introduced to one very special and unique site. And that's this. This is the former Williamsburg trolley terminal. It's over an acre, or 4,000 square meters in size. And it was used to transport passengers in the streetcar era of New York City in the early 1900s. For those of you familiar with New York, it transported people from the Lower East Side over the Williamsburg Bridge and into Brooklyn. But it hasn't been used since 1948. So it's really this incredible site, both due to its scale and the fact that it hasn't been touched in literally over 60 years. So this is what the site looks like today, and you can really start to get a sense of the scale of the space. The ceiling's over 12 feet or 3.5 meters tall, and it feels very cavernous, a bit like a theater. You can also see some of the architectural details, the rail lines, the corrugated ceilings, and hopefully you can start to see the potential of the site. This is another image, and you can see there's evidence of human activity and graffiti art throughout the space. So there's really a lot of interesting and compelling stories of what has happened down there over the course of many decades. On the left, we see a control tower here, and we immediately got to thinking, wouldn't this be fun if it could somehow be turned into like a treehouse for kids? On the right, these are some of the old cobblestones. These are Belgian blocks, which were literally brought over from Belgium at the turn of the century. And this is an aerial view of the site. The green area is the proposed Lowline site, superimposed over a Google map. The yellow area is the Williamsburg Bridge, which I mentioned before. And one thing that's important to note, one thing that's important to us, of those who live and work in the neighborhood, is really its lack of green space. It's really just a series of parking lots and dense, crowded housing. And this is something that has plagued the Lower East Side for many years. And it's something that we began to investigate even further as we became more and more excited about this site that we found. So this is a real basic chart. It shows the downtown area of Manhattan that we're talking about and how it's one of the least green areas of the city, which in turn is one of the least green cities when compared to other cities of comparable density. So this is a real clear issue in terms of the number of people living per unit of green space. But this isn't anything new to the area. In the Lower East Side, you could always find a very bustling streetscape, but really a lack of public space. And these were the conditions for which the many generations of immigrants, which the Lower East Side is known for, lived in. This is where my grandfather lived when he immigrated from Russia. He worked from the age of 10, pushing a pushcart up and down the street. And the street was really the only public space, which I guess at the time wasn't such a huge issue, but over the course of the century, cars really started to take over. This is another image, and it's a haunting photo. It's from Jacob Riis's iconic book, How the Other Half Lived, and you see a bunch of kids literally playing in the gutter directly next to a dead horse carcass. And apparently this wasn't uncommon in this time in New York City's history. And it was photos like these and efforts to bring to life the real lack of public space which helped pave the way for the development of public parks in New York City and other urban centers around the world. So if you flash forward to today, and this is an image from the Williamsburg Bridge looking into Manhattan, you see a very, very different city. But in fact, a lot of the same challenges from the course of the last century still exist. It's extremely dense, and one of the hallmarks you see here is the real takeover of cars. So the question is, how do you think about transforming this neighborhood? How do you think about taking this site we found and think about it becoming something else? And we think the solution is with technology. This is a type of solar technology that one of the project's co-founders, James Ramsey, invented. Basically, what you have here at street level is a series of inverted umbrellas. They collect sunlight, reflect it to a single focal point, and through a series of mirrors and fiber optics, redistribute it underground at an intensity that will support photosynthesis. So you can literally have plants and trees growing beneath our city streets. This is something we've tested both in prototype phase and something we recently put on an exhibit for this past fall. So you take this site and this concept of solar technology I briefly brought you through, and we started playing around with ideas of what it could look like. And this was led by James Ramsey and his design firm RAD. So what they did was they took a 3D model of this site and they envisioned what a future subterranean park with natural sunlight and green elements could look like. And here's one of the images they came up with. These are a series of images which were first released about a year and a half ago. And I think they got people in New York City and around the world really excited, and I'm thankful to be here today due to that. So what you have here is the introduction of these solar distributors, and they're bringing in this really wonderful quality of light. You can see the light's almost raining down. There's green elements and, of course, this exquisitely designed space. Here's another image which shows you how the existing rail lines could be incorporated to make this type of nice walkway. So that's all great. And really over the past year and a half, we've been getting the word out there. There's been a ton of press. And people say, awesome. But how do you actually do this? How do you actually build the world's first underground park? So one of the first things we did was to put on a Kickstarter campaign. And Kickstarter, for those of you who don't know, although I assume most of you in this audience do, is a popular crowdfunding platform in the US. And we were blown away by the interest in the project. We raised over $150,000 from over 3,000 backers. And we were surprised to see that interest came not only from around New York City, but from all around the US and as far as Russia and Australia. And we even received a lot of support from right here in Germany. It was the most popular urban design project on the crowdfunding platform to date, and it allowed us to raise the initial money to put on the solar technology exhibit, which I mentioned before. So this is us pulling together this exhibit. That's me on the left in much more casual attire, speaking with Ed Jacobs, who is the industrial designer on the project. And what we did is we took this raw, abandoned warehouse, we blacked it all out to simulate this underground environment. And then we built this solar technology on site. It was over 30 feet or 9 meters in diameter, and this is one version of what the ultimate solar technology could look like. So what we were able to do is build a site that looks like this. And you can see the sunlight coming through the solar technology. And beneath it, this is a small-scale replica of what the actual Lowline Park could look like. We had a very tall Japanese maple, a series of mosses and ferns and mushrooms, which were actually able to sprout on site while we were open. So it's really this incredible opportunity for us to both showcase how the technology works and also how plants can thrive in this environment. We were open for about 2 weeks, but we saw over 11,000 people come through the exhibit, and it served as real validation for us that there is significant interest in this idea. And we'd also been thinking more closely about how the actual Lowline Park could function. And the good news is there's a lot of precedents out there, and there's a lot of really talented folks who have helped advise us. We recently completed a feasibility study which laid out a series of really core findings of what has worked in public spaces, both in New York City and around the world. And we've been inspired by a lot of the projects going on here in Europe, from the art in the Swedish underground to the amazing repurposing projects in Berlin at Kulturpark and the former Tempelhof Airport. And would love to hear and speak with anyone later who knows about or is working on any other really inspiring underground or repurposing projects. So through our research, we learned that there's actually a lot in common with the world's most popular parks. There's certainly anchors in food and beverage, and also what we're calling a mix of passive recreation. So it's everything from going to a space to read a book to something which is a bit more programmed, more structured. And this is something we've explored with a wide range of advisors, and we really came out thinking there's a lot we can do with the site that we found. The next big thing our feasibility study found is there's ways to generate real value both at the local level and at the city level with the introduction of a new public space. For example, the High Line, and for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a public park which opened on the west side of Manhattan in 2009 on an old elevated railway, and it's obviously an inspiration for us as we borrow our name from them. And it's been estimated they've been able to generate something close to $2 billion in value for retail and real estate in the area. We see the Lowline adding value not only by enhancing transit options, given that it's connected to an existing subway line, but also in creating new business opportunities for the locally owned businesses that make the Lower East Side the special place it is. So we'd definitely be able to fuel the local economy, but more broadly on a citywide level, there's some real advantages to this approach. It'd be the first application of this type of solar technology into an existing site, and it would be an example building off the recent successes and building a type of New York City that's at the cutting edge of what cities can become and how we can think about transforming other underutilized spaces. Oh, I love that that 3D printer just spit something out. And there's our prototype. No. So I just close, because the 3D printer is clearly ready to talk, close in just saying that we're at a really exciting stage in our development. We've showcased how the technology can work, and now we're actively engaging with the city and state to gain control of the actual site, as well as continuing with our fundraising efforts. The good news is that we've seen support from multiple levels of government as they see the value in being part of what would become the world's first underground park, as well as preserving a very important part of our city's history. So it's our hope that this is a story that will not go away, and one day we can all discover the magic and just which lies underground. So thank you.